let's get started, and I'm going to share a bit about Bogart to begin with. So many of you on this call are perhaps clients already, but for those who don't know us, just a bit about Bogart Wealth. So we are a RIA, a registered investment advisory firm, which means we are completely independent. We do custody assets at Charles Schwab, but we are independent and are fiduciaries. So what does that mean? We are always going to do what is in the best interest of our clients, which is quite important. Our mission is to provide financial peace of mind, preserving and maximizing intergenerational wealth. So that's what we come in every day ready to do for our clients. We have the honor of working with and supporting over 1,200 families. And that equates to about $2.6 billion that we advise our clients on. Let me move ahead. Here's our team. Obviously, James is a face you probably all know and recognize, as he is CEO and president of Bogart Wealth. But these are all of our financial advisors. So we have a few offices. I'm here in McLean, Virginia, but we also have a presence in 2 offices in Texas as well. If you've been with us for any number of years, you know this is really increased. I think it doubled in 22 and added quite a bit more last year as well. A lot of really great tenured advisors. I think 85% are north of like 12 years of financial experience. So we've got a really great team here to help with any of your wealth planning needs that we'll discuss today. This is kind of more of our team here. So we do have a fantastic marketing team that we've added over the past year, as well as our operations team, advisory, group that we have here. This is our operations and planning team. So headquarters for us is McLean, Virginia, where I'm sitting right now. So we're here over a number of floors. We take up quite a bit of space in this office, but we do have a great operations team if you do need help with anything, as well as the planning team, who really comes up with the kind of end result in that total financial plan that we share with you and we'll discuss today. We also, of course, have our portfolio management team here in McLean as well. Alex kind of steers the ship there, but this is his team making all of those day-to-day decisions on the portfolio assets that we are tasked to run and do for you. If you have not been listening, make sure you listen in as Alex and James do a monthly marketing call. They're recorded. So if you aren't available to listen to it, it is actually on Black Diamond or your Bogart site. It's to the right there. So great way to listen in and hear directly from Alex and the team what we're doing from the portfolio, what we're seeing in the market, and the specific moves that we're making. Again, in 3 different offices. So here I am in McLean, but we also have, as many of you know, advisors and offices in Houston and the Woodlands as well. This is a really high overview of comprehensive planning or wealth planning. Now today we will focus a little bit more on retirement planning, as that's the largest goal we all have to fund. But wealth planning certainly covers quite a bit more than that. And more things right there under this umbrella that we do, but just a general idea of some of the areas that we can focus on and support you in, as we always start with a financial plan. Everything that we're doing is predicated on that plan first and foremost. So if you have not done a plan with us before, I encourage you to. Please, we're quite good at it. So make sure you're taking advantage of the planning that we do and offer. Retirement Readiness Series. So the one you're watching now, so the wealth planning webinar, this is, I think, maybe number 8 that we've done in 3 or 4 months. So we have really been doing a lot of great webinars. Again, if you can't listen live, they are all recorded. So if you're a client on your Black Diamond or Bogart site, as you might call it, on that very first homepage, you'll see down to the right a box labeled External Links. And underneath those recorded monthly market calls that I mentioned, there's a hyperlink right there for webinar recordings. So certainly go back and feel free to share with anyone that you think might be interested in some of the different webinars that we've done recently. So here's, kind of high-level overview and agenda, which you received via email as well, of what we're going to talk about today. Why wealth planning? What is important to you? Some risks to consider and think about and ways to mitigate those. And what's the process? What does that look like? As I said a few minutes ago, we will focus more so on an example of retirement planning throughout. But one of the really great things that we do with our plans is to incorporate all of your goals. So while retirement is a huge one that we've got to fund and think about, for me, wealth planning also encompasses education and college planning for my 3 young children. It could be your charitable and philanthropic goals. So we really do a great job of looking at everything, all of those goals that you hold in tandem to say, how can we solve for this? Is one of these goals putting the other at risk? Let's rethink that. So we want to consider everything that you wish to do with your assets and your wealth. And that truly is wealth planning, but we'll kind of talk about the retirement piece quite a bit today as well. So a retirement income plan, what does it do for you? Why are you doing it? So really it helps you to minimize risk that all retirees face. There are certainly some risk and considerations that might be specific to you and your family or the state that you live in, but there's a lot that are universal. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think inflation is only here in Northern Virginia, but something that impacts all of our clients across the U.S. So how do we take those into consideration, and what are ways to address risk throughout retirement? Making informed choices about funding your retirement. There's a lot of different tax advantage vehicles that you may have access to. Are we optimizing those? What are some considerations? Ensuring predictable income. Just as pre-retirement, you like to get that paycheck coming in. We want to make it seamless and have a plan for how that paycheck is going to continue to come post-retirement. Determining a sustainable withdrawal rate and an appropriate amount to make sure that you don't outlive your assets. Longevity is certainly something to consider, and monitoring your plan to adjust and stay on track. Creating income from your portfolio is fundamentally very different than building it. Probably stating the obvious, but as you are accumulating and saving throughout retirement, a lot of it's on autopilot, not everything, but you are deferring into your employer-sponsored plan or saving in individual accounts. You have to really think about, and there are a lot of other considerations, taxes included, when it comes time to start to pull from. Which account makes the most sense to do, and that can change year to year based on your cash flow. So what is important to you? This is truly the foundation for all wealth planning that we do. So what impact will your family have on your retirement plans? While I can't perfectly predict if my now 4-year-old will leave the nest and return in retirement, and I'll need to fund that. Maybe if you're closer to retirement, you do know some of those considerations. Are you still needing to support children or siblings or parents? Thinking through the impact that they could have. You can't perfectly plan for it, but there are things to consider as you're coming up with your retirement plan. How will you stay both mentally and physically active throughout retirement? This is huge. I always like to say, and I've been doing this for coming up on 18 years, so I've seen a lot of people retire, and there's typically kind of this honeymoon, 1-year phase post-retirement where I've really observed that kind of identifying how do you want to spend your time, volunteering or traveling, what do you want to do with your time in retirement? How could changes in your spouse's health impact your retirement plans? So, I think a lot of people do like to have those early go-go years, right? Where you're really traveling early in retirement, where you're still feeling your best and your healthiest to really kind of enjoy, different trips that you can take. Where do you plan and live retirement? Are you going to retire where you've lived for the last 30 years, or you fall on a kiddo? Or do you have multiple homes, right? Maybe you keep your main, but there's a second home that is closer to where children or other family members might live. But where do you plan to live? There's different state taxes from Texas to Virginia and all of the others. So there's a lot to think about, and we can really model and show you what that could look like. So those are just some big considerations to kind of start with. So then we come up with creating a plan based off that and how you want to live it. So again, thinking about your lifestyle, what activities do you want to do? Will you work in retirement? I find a lot of clients do enjoy working or continue consulting in retirement, not because it's financial necessary, but it just keeps them engaged. It's something they enjoy and keeps them mentally sharp. Thinking about your legacy, do you want to pass assets along? And just, again, really, what do you want from retirement? So this is a study that was done at Transamerica, and they took about 4,500 different surveys and really broke it down by age 50 plus. So those that are still working but are not yet retired, but you'll see in the light blue, and the dark blue are the survey takers who have already retired. And, it's interesting to really see that there are a number of concerns that you face as you're thinking about or approaching retirement. The number one being outliving your assets, right? Running out of money. And I agree with that. My survey, if you will, over 17 years shows that, yes, that is really where we start, is going through that analysis of what you've saved, what are your expenses, what are income sources, and number one, is it viable? Are we able to sustain throughout retirement? And that really is the biggest concern, and something we can solve for and plan for. Probably not surprising that I know this is probably a little bit small, but to the far right here being laid off, 0% of retired survey takers are concerned about losing their job. They're already retired. But some other ones you'll see, will Social Security be reduced or cease to exist? That's a huge one as we do Social Security planning for clients, and what's the optimal time to take it based on a couple. If you're married, right, there's a lot more to consider. Declining health, long-term care costs, very, very, very expensive. So this is another one that we see and we can plan for, right? What would that look like? We know there's reports of what full-time nursing homes would be in your area. Genworth does this, and it's very easy to get access to it and type in your zip code. So we're able, with our financial plan, to model what if you do need to be in long-term care for a number of years based on what it costs today, inflating that number. Losing independence. So there's quite a few in here that shows a lot of the retirement concerns that maybe y'all have felt if you've already gone through retirement or are thinking about as you approach. It's universal. You're not alone. So here's some of the risk in retirement. So as I mentioned, there's some that are very specific to you, but these are really universal risks. So longevity. An average couple who are age 65, so if you've made it to 65 and you're a couple, so apparently if you're married, it helps your longevity, there is a 49% chance that one of you is making it to age 90. 90 is our default that we use for financial planning purposes, as y'all may know. We can certainly extend that if you want to kind of stress the portfolio, but 90 is our default, and here's the statistic to support that. If you are 65 and a couple, there's a 20% chance that one of you is living to 95, 4% one of you is going all the way to 100. So really wanting to stress and make sure that the assets can last the duration of retirement. Inflation is one that it's always an issue or concern, but I think we can all agree that in recent years has definitely been a huge focus on the inflation that we've experienced, and something that will continue throughout retirement. Sequencing of returns. So, what does this mean? What if your first year in retirement was 2023 when the market's up 26%, right? What if you start retirement in a really great up market versus someone that retired January 1st of 2008 when the market was down significantly? So thinking about and planning for the sequence of returns and what if you start off in a down year. Typically, we like to solve for this or mitigate this risk by having your first few years of retirement in something that is very low risk and decoupled from the market so that you aren't selling at an inopportune time. And healthcare costs. They're rising. I know, again, anyone on this call that is taking Medicare or has your retiree health plan, then you've seen that increase certainly over the past year, especially with the long-term care, expenses. Those have gone up significantly. And this is why when we do the financial plan and we go through the assessment, we inflate healthcare costs at a higher rate than all the other costs to really try and stress and plan for that. So what is retirement income planning? Historical averages can help us forecast your needs. Again, inflation's going to be very different. The past years has certainly been significantly higher, but we know over a long period of time where inflation lands, and that's what we can use moving forward. Same for the market, right? The stock market does not give us this lovely linear rate of return, but we know on average, what the market does, and we use some of these assumptions to build out and plan for the cash flow. And we'll talk about our, 4-step approach that we use for planning as well. So really it's, having a methodical process designed for your life and your unique financial needs. Having a methodical process, trying to remove the emotion that we can all feel when the markets are going up and down. If you've got that plan in place to stick to, it helps you to kind of stay the course. So here's our 4-step process, and I'll break it down, throughout these slides. But, we start with a retirement analysis. What is your current position? What are your goals, income, expenses, assets? Let's see, again, number 1, do you have enough for us to really plan and create that retirement plan? Then we can build the investment strategy, which is predicated on that plan and retirement analysis that we do. And furthermore, think about your withdrawal strategy. I find most people come into retirement with tax-deferred or tax-sheltered pre-tax assets, which is, the majority of what a 401k or a savings plan would be. Then you might have some tax-free, some Roth assets in there, and then a brokerage account, right, which is after-tax money. So thinking about the tax diversification you have, what is the best place to provide the income in any one year? And monitor and review. It is not set it and forget it. So we certainly do quite a bit in the onset of doing that retirement income plan. Hopefully throughout the process of retiring, we've streamlined and consolidated some things and done a lot of the work up front. But you still want to review. As the market changes, your needs and goals will certainly change. So it's a continuous process. So let's dive into understanding what makes your retirement unique and step 1, right? Analyzing the plan. So again, think about your lifestyle, your goals, and what you want throughout retirement. Those kind of first few questions I posed early on, which is going to be unique and different to everyone. Where do you want to retire and what does that look like? How much income will you need? This is by far the biggest pitfall or area that I find is often not as realistic as it should be as we're gathering the information and data. So being very realistic about what you're going to spend in retirement. If you are, for an example, let's say someone is still working and you can see after all of their deductions, taxes, what hit their bank account that year was $100,000 from income. But then as we're gathering this data to go with that retirement plan, you say, oh, my expenses are going to be $50,000. Yes, some things might be reduced, maybe your traveling budget, if you're metroing or driving into work, or dry cleaning bill, certainly some things will change, but it's very unlikely that they're going to be cut in half. And again, we try to really kind of check that with what we can see and the expenses given, but really making sure you provide realistic expenses throughout retirement. Go higher, right? I always say add some miscellaneous what if just to be more conservative. And then, kind of breaking them down across essential, discretionary, and then, unexpected or wealth transfer goals. So, which is kind of a broad thing to think about, but common ways that we like to have you think about and compartmentalize your expenses. And as you think about spending, again, here's just talking about the ways you can think about and kind of divide into those categories. So, you've got your essential expenses, which that doesn't change if you are nearing retirement or in retirement. Everyone's got the essentials, right? Your mortgage or housing, healthcare, insurance, food, the must-haves. And then the discretionary expenses, which again, I say be generous as you're planning, because especially in early years, you might want to travel more and kind of spend a bit more on those items. Setting aside enough for emergency expenses. Again, regardless of what phase of life you're in, you should always have that emergency fund. A very general rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months. I prefer 6 months. And I find that a lot of clients who, as they enter retirement, even like to have it as much as 1 year's worth of essential expenses. So we'll help guide you, but something to think about for having that sleep at night money decoupled from the market. And then do you increase it annually for cost of living adjustments? You should. There is inflation. Things are costing more. I find that most of the time, clients don't necessarily do it every single year. You can, and we encourage you to. But often it, kind of stays the same for a few years. Then they'll say, hey, we do need to increase it, right? It's getting a little close at the end of the month. Let's increase what you're sending me. Excuse me. Healthcare costs rise higher, more than CPI. As I mentioned early on, we inflate it. So we actually apply an inflation of 4.5% to your healthcare costs, whether that be your premium, out-of-pocket, dental, long-term care. We actually go even higher than that. But for healthcare costs, we do try to, again, mitigate and kind of stress for that higher inflation that we experience, and building in extra cost for long-term care. Identifying your income sources. So, think about it as I like to call it, your mailbox money, which is, Social Security, pension, or an annuity. Yes, I know that direct deposit has been around since the 70s, but I like mailbox money. So what are the sources of income that are guaranteed, that are predictable, and that they're going to be reoccurring every month? So we always start with that in the plan. And then above and beyond that, if you have rental income, or if there will be some consulting or part-time work that you have throughout, and then everything else is coming from the portfolio, right? So from personal savings and investments. How much assured income do you want to cover your essential expenses? If you're someone who is maybe a little bit more conservative with your financial plan, with your investments, for those clients, if you have that choice for a pension to be a lump sum or monthly income or somewhere in between, right, to take it as a monthly annuity, they might lean more towards, and we might recommend having that annuitized to cover essential expenses. I find that most don't, but, really thinking through your essential expenses and then what is your guaranteed source of income, which would be Social Security, pension, or a personal annuity, with pensions only about 11%, right, is the number from 2021 of employers that offer a pension. Obviously, a lot of our retirees at Exxon do, and even here, right, in DC. So if you work for the U.S. government, you've got a pension. So we do, deal with them maybe more than most financial advisors, but broadly speaking, not many people do have a pension anymore. So, having a fixed annuity, a personal annuity as well. And then again, savings and retirement. You're kind of filling the gap from your portfolio. This shows Social Security, and so the numbers you're seeing here, so this year, so maximum covered earnings. So 168,600 is the number for 2024. So as I'm still working, anyone who's still working, the maximum amount that you can be taxed on for your income is 168,600. This tends to go up each year with inflation. But what this is showing you is that if your income, if you're making those maximum covered earnings, so 168 is what you're making, your Social Security at your normal retirement age, so for me, 67, would cover about 27%, replace 27% of your income. So just kind of a neat way to think about it. Obviously, the more you make, so as you see the earnings go up, if you're double that, then Social Security is only covering 15%. But just thinking about how much is this going to replace? It's, for most people, it's not replacing everything, but can replace quite a bit of your income. So for the investment strategy, so again, we start with the plan. We understand your cash flow needs, your risk tolerance, all of your goals and objectives that you have. And then we come up with and recommend what's the right investment strategy that supports the plan and the cash flow needs that we just went through. These are some of the various, elements. And I would say for most people, you're going to have a blend. You're going to have some of these, right? Maybe not all, but typically it is a kind of diverse mix of these different investment strategies. And we'll dive into each one a little bit further. So for, thinking about annuities, so again, it could be through your pension or a personal annuity that you have, and the different types, a bond ladder, and we'll discuss that, income-oriented investments, dividends, right? Everyone really likes to have those dividend-paying blue chip stocks, and it can give you a good, predictable paycheck in retirement. Fixed asset allocation, so maybe that's having a 60-40 mix of 60% stocks, 40% bonds, kind of rebalancing towards that. Or a dynamic asset allocation, which takes the fixed up a step further and tweaking the portfolio based on current economic cycle and things that we're facing. Emotions can destroy your plan. I will say I was doing this in 2008 when we had a very severe recession, as I'm sure you're all recounting. And, unfortunately, you see people that even if I say, don't do it right, we have a plan, stay in. It's very hard emotionally when you're seeing that much red. So again, ideally heading into any kind of a downturn, we've already taken into account risk tolerance and cash flow to help you stay the course, so that you don't feel that panic or make that knee-jerk reaction to selling in a down market. And that's really what our process is there to do and help support. Different types of annuities. So I'll just kind of touch on this quickly. So for personal annuities, that you can go if you don't have a pension, then you can take a portion of your retirement assets or any assets that you have and purchase an annuity. And kind of the three general types that there are is a fixed annuity, indexed, or variable. So for these two, think income annuity. The goal is to generate some predictable, guaranteed source of income throughout retirement. A fixed annuity works just like a CD or buying an individual bond. So here's the set rate of interest that you can receive. You hold it for that period, receive the interest, your principal, and it matures. So sometimes we'll use these, or clients might like them in lieu of a CD. It really just is where you're getting more interest at that time. And then having an indexed annuity, which is tied to, a set, maybe S&P 500 or a set market, and then a variable annuity as well. So different types of annuities that you can own in the portfolio. And this is just showing kind of different yields and cash flow. We are, if you're someone seeking yield, then you've actually been enjoying the past year because there's actually some interest and yield to be had on fixed investments, with money markets still giving you, 5.19, 5.2%. So this just shows the various yields that you can get from different fixed instruments currently. Obviously, this will change as interest rates do. Income-oriented investors, as I said, a lot of people really are gravitated and enjoy having dividend-paying stocks. And so, it is a great way to see if a company, if they have consistently grown their dividend, typically a sign of a good, healthy company. And so living off of dividends can be part of the portfolio as well. And this just showing you kind of how the dividends have been. The overall yield on the S&P 500 right now is around 2%, maybe a little less. But within that, you can certainly select ones that do offer their historically different sectors and parts of the market that offer a dividend yield. And we actually have one of our portfolios, Prime Income, focuses on and only selects between those types of stocks. Dynamic asset allocation. So let's talk about this. This is what we do at Bogart. So again, I'll go back to an example of having a 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. You don't necessarily want to, what we don't do is just always rebalance it back to exactly 60-40. There are guardrails, right? And that might be the right mix for someone to have that portfolio. But what in reality that might look like is, hey, of that 60%, we are going to choose to be underweight international for a number of reasons. We would rather have more of the assets here at home. So of that 60, we're going to choose to have more US than international. Bonds. Bonds is a big way that we used our dynamic allocation over the past few years. As interest rates rise, they have an inverse relationship and you see bonds go down. And while we can't perfectly predict that, right, there's signs of indications of where interest rates will be. And so during that rising period, Alex and our investment team decided to own shorter duration and shorter term bonds. So dynamic allocation isn't, trying to market time and going all to cash or 100% stocks, but it's really saying, hey, within this model portfolio, within this kind of general parameter that we have, what are areas that we want to overweight or underweight within the portfolio. This is one of my favorite charts. I know it's very busy and it's going to look small on the screen, but you'll have a copy of this. But this is the periodic table of returns. And it shows different asset classes. As we think about stocks, bonds, and cash, those are kind of the three very broad levels of asset classes. But this also dissects them a bit and looks at different areas within stocks, bonds, and cash to show you how they've returned in any one year. Although you're probably not reading the fine print, I can guarantee that you can see the orange one jumps around quite a bit where it's either in first or last. And the same for kind of this maroon color you'll see first or last. And it's because they're both very volatile asset classes. So real estate and emerging market equities. But the point of this is that you want to be diversified, right? Because 50% real estate's first, 50% is last. Don't want to take my bets on that. So having a diversified mix between all of these different asset classes to have a good long-term portfolio. You'll see this goes over the past 20 years. So light blue, cash was king in 2 of those years, with 2022 being one of those where being in cash was the best place to be. Most of the time, you want to be invested, right? So having it in stocks or bonds and a mix of all of them. Establishing a withdrawal strategy, again, something we help to craft and come up with. If you've been deferring money into retirement, saving for your goal for 30 years, going the other way and turning on the income is a very different thing to do. Very hard, I think kind of emotional for clients to do, but also really picking, hey, what is the best way to do it, taking into account my needs, tax rates in that year. And so that's something that we do. There are many to think about, and here's kind of a common one, again, that I think makes sense for a lot of people, which is a bucket approach. So in this example, this person has 1.5 million and they need 60,000 a year in income. So having the first 1 to 5 years, that's a big range. And again, what would feed this is how conservative you are. But having, a number of years, in this example, they did 5 years. So having 300,000 set aside in cash, again, investment grade bonds, so something that is lower risk, so that if you do have that down market or have that, negative sequence of returns where you start off in a bad year, your assets that are going to be impacted most by it are these long-term ones. They aren't your paycheck. So again, it helps clients to stay the course, to say, yeah, the market's going a little crazy right now, but I know my paycheck is in something that is safe and decoupled from the market. And then again, kind of having the next few years, so 6 to 12, set aside in something that is more intermediate risk. And then something that you're going, okay, we're not touching it for 13 years or more. Your Roth IRA, right? Which is growing tax-free, no RMDs, right? A great asset to have. Generally, you're going to touch that last in retirement. So for a Roth, it could be 100% in stocks. So not just thinking about your asset allocation, but your asset location as well. This shows, I think a 4% withdrawal rate is a very, very common thing that a lot of people have heard of. They did adjust it a couple of years back to say, well, maybe you want to stay closer to 3% or somewhere in between. But this shows for a, balanced portfolio or portfolio giving you a 5% return, how long the assets will last based on different withdrawal rates. 8% not being sustainable. So if you had an 8% withdrawal rate in this scenario, it's lasting about 15 years in retirement. So if you retire at 60, you'd be bouncing the last check at 75. Not what we want to see. So trying to be thoughtful about the withdrawal rate. Generally, I would say most clients start off with a higher withdrawal rate because you're probably fully leaning on the portfolio before you turn on Social Security or other income sources. And then if you're maximizing and taking Social Security at 70, then you'll see your withdrawal rate go down. So it doesn't have to be, I think I rarely see it be a fixed, rate that lasts throughout retirement because of, Social Security and other considerations. Choices in thinking about what to manage. So as I mentioned, thinking through the different tax types that you have, after-tax money, Roth money, pre-tax or qualified money, and where to withdraw from. That's something that we help our clients to come up with. RMDs certainly will fund quite a bit, and you're forced to start taking out from any pre-tax sources like a traditional rollover IRA. It just got moved back to 75. But that's something you really want to make sure you're doing. If you don't withdraw or take out your full RMD in those years, there is a pretty big tax penalty. Thankfully, that was reduced as part of Secure Act 2.0. If y'all haven't listened to it yet, my coworker, Misty, did a fantastic webinar on the Secure Act 2.0 and a lot of the changes that were a part of that, including RMD age and those penalties being two of the many. Definitely great, and I'd encourage you to go listen. So Roth conversion planning, we have an entire, I'm going to just spend a fraction of time here because we do have a whole webinar that is spent on Roth conversion planning. But this is something that we do for clients where we can forecast their RMD is going to be well above what they need. And, or if wealth transfer is important, passing along tax-free assets. There's a number of reasons you would want to do Roth conversion planning. This is just a snippet of 2 pages in a very, very big report that we do. But this shows you the current position, let's call it. So without any conversion planning, just here's what you're on course to do, to wait and take those RMDs. You see in this scenario, the client leaves, so portfolio at $18.4 million, and of that, less than 8% Roth or tax-free. With some Roth conversions and planning there, portfolio assets only goes up by $50,000, less than, over a whole period. You might think, big deal. Why am I doing all of this and paying these taxes to just maybe give my kids $50,000 more? That's because you'll notice here the tax-free portion of your ending assets is closer to 40%. Non-spousal beneficiaries have to take out and deplete the accounts within 10 years. So if you aren't doing Roth planning and it's needed, so this is a great example of someone where we can identify and say, we need to do some Roth planning for you, then you might as well put the IRS as one of your beneficiaries. Because if you're leaving behind $18 million, kids have to take that out over 10 years. A huge piece of that's going to get eaten away by taxes. So really thinking about, the tax-free portion is a reason and something we can demonstrate as a benefit of Roth planning. I just got a question. So are RMDs around 4% of traditional IRA value or higher or lower? Great question. So there are actually actuarial tables, and the way your RMD or required minimum distribution will be calculated is, in the year that you need to take it, what was your balance December 31st? And then there's a divisor based on your age, but it comes out to be 4%. A little bit under, but yes, your required minimum distributions do start at 4% approximately. That increases each year. So the goal of the IRS and the actuaries who created this is that, you're depleting that asset throughout retirement. With any reasonable level of growth, you aren't necessarily if you're just taking the RMDs, but it starts at 4% and does go up each year. So that's a great question. Tax planning. So again, thinking about your income strategy, and this is a great chart that shows the ways that different types of income are taxed, with dividends and long-term capital gains being more favorable, Roth being tax-free versus, Social Security. I find people are often shocked to hear that they're going to pay tax on their Social Security. For some, they don't. It is a very low threshold. So it is most likely for someone who is truly leaning on Social Security to where they could possibly not pay tax on it. Most everyone else is going to pay tax, not on all of it, but 85% of it is going to be included in your income tax. And this shows the various tax rates. Reviewing and monitoring. So as I mentioned, it is not one and done. Usually it is most of the heavy lifting is up front, but we are wanting to go through, even in retirement, especially in retirement, reassessing your goals, your needs. Tax rates have changed, the market's changed, right? Even if nothing has changed in your world with your objectives or cash flow, the market's moved on you, inflation's moved. We want to continually reassess that retirement plan and take into account changes in tax law and other things that we might want to get ahead of and think about. Creating your retirement paycheck. So again, summarizing a lot of what we talked about today. So coming up with a sustainable initial withdrawal rate. Again, it's okay if it starts out above 4%, if it's reduced throughout because of turning on a source of income. We show you in our plan, we actually calculate your rate of return, your withdrawal rate, every single year throughout retirement. Building a foundation for essentials, having a withdrawal strategy for your discretionary needs and what you want to pull out, having a diversified portfolio, which is recommended regardless of where you are in your financial planning journey, implementing spending and withdrawal strategies, having essentials covered by lifetime income. I call it mailbox money, and just increasing the probability for having a successful retirement. That is the goal. You need to have a plan. Saying it very bluntly. So think about partnering with a financial advisor that here's a lot of the, requirements. So I often tell people, interview multiple financial advisors to make sure it's someone who aligns with, understands you, has a communication style that works well for you. certified financial planner, as most of us are. That's a big accreditation that can kind of back your financial planner. It's a really tough test to go through. So usually seeing that CFP is a requirement that clients look for. Navigating multiple business cycles, managing portfolios, and really just kind of gets to understand you and your family. So these are some things to think about. We would love to have a one-on-one financial strategy session with you if we aren't already. So for our clients, then yes, you're getting these updates and the plans and quarterly calls or contact from us. But if you haven't and you are interested, we do financial planning for free. It's the basis of where we start, and we don't charge you for it. So you can go through and see the experience before making that decision of coming on board with us. Here's our contact information. We have clients all over the US and internationally. So, if you do want to go and sit down with someone, then, here's kind of the locations that you could meet in Texas or here in McLean. Otherwise, we can obviously connect and meet with you via Zoom. Thank you all for joining today. I'm checking. I think my RMD was my only question. If you do think of a question afterwards, feel free to reach out to your advisor or to us on our website. There is an area where you can request a meeting if you haven't met with us before. Certainly let us know if you have any questions or feedback, anything you'd like to hear from as we're continuing to do these webinars. But I appreciate your time. Everyone have a wonderful day.